Hello, everyone. Tonight we embark on a journey into a more challenging, perhaps even unsettling, corner of the Middle Ages. We've spoken of grand feasts and shining armor, but now let us turn our gaze to a profound truth that often remained unspoken, a quiet struggle that defined countless lives, the daily realities of women in the medieval world. Forget notions of equality, agency, or individual rights as we understand them. Tonight, we'll explore the deep-seated unfairness, the constant vulnerability, and the harsh societal gaze that often looked down upon women, illuminating both their perils and their enduring, quiet strength. Born to a role, childhood and the fettered path. Imagine being born a girl in a medieval village, say, in the 14th century. Your path was, from your very first breath, largely predetermined. Unlike a boy, whose future might hold the plow, the craft of a smith, or even the distant dream of knighthood, your destiny was inextricably tied to the domestic sphere and to a marriage arranged for pragmatic reasons. There was no concept of a career or personal ambition beyond these confines. Your childhood, brief and laborious, was your apprenticeship. From a tender age, perhaps 5 or 6, you would be tethered to your mother's side, learning the ceaseless rhythm of household tasks, fetching water from the well, tending the kitchen garden, grinding grain, learning to spin wool into yarn, to weave simple cloth on a small loom, to knead dough for bread, and to care for younger siblings. These weren't chores you could opt out of. They were your essential education, vital skills for the very survival of your family. There were no dolls for idle play, only tools that became extensions of your small working hands. Your days were long, beginning before dawn and ending well after sunset, dictated by the seasons and the constant demands of the land and household. Every meal, every piece of clothing, every ounce of warmth in winter was the result of relentless, back-breaking labor. As you grew, so did your responsibilities. By the time you were a young woman, perhaps 12 or 13, you were already performing the duties of an adult, often stronger and more skilled in domestic arts than many modern women twice your age. Yet, despite your immense contributions, your voice in family matters remained secondary. The decision of who you would marry was almost never your own. For noble women, it was a grand political negotiation, trading lands and alliances. Their marriages could seal treaties, consolidate power, or avert wars, making them pawns in a much larger game. They might be sent to live in foreign lands, marrying men they had never met, leaving behind everything familiar. For peasant girls, it was equally a practical arrangement, decided by your parents or your lord. It was about securing a good plot of land, merging families for shared labor, or ensuring stability within the village community. Love, if it blossomed, often came much later, a quiet companionship forged through shared burdens and daily life, rather than a passionate premarital choice. You entered marriage often in your mid to late teens, sometimes even earlier in noble families, leaving your own family to join another, taking with you a small dowry, perhaps a few pieces of linen, a pot, or a small sum of coin, which was rarely considered your independent property, but managed by your husband. You stepped into a new life where your husband was, by law and custom, your master. Your identity shifted, becoming primarily defined by your marital status and your husband's name, the shadow of childbirth, motherhood, and loss. Once married, a woman's primary purpose, both socially and spiritually, became clear: to bear children, particularly sons, who would ensure the family's lineage and provide labor for the fields. To be barren was a profound personal sorrow and often a source of great shame, sometimes even grounds for divorce or repudiation. Yet, this most fundamental of roles plunged medieval women into terrifying peril. Childbirth was, without exaggeration, the single most dangerous event in a medieval woman's life. Imagine giving birth in a dim, often unhygienic cottage, attended by a local midwife whose knowledge, though steeped in generations of experience, lacked any understanding of germ theory or modern medical intervention. There were no antiseptics, no pain relief beyond herbal remedies, no C-sections for complicated births. The birthing bed might be a straw mattress, the light from a flickering candle. The air would be thick with tension, prayers whispered, and the quiet, guttural sounds of extreme effort. Infection after birth was terrifyingly common, leading to puerperal fever, a rapid, agonizing descent into death. Hemorrhage, prolonged labor, and other complications were often fatal for both mother and child. It's estimated that 1 in 5, or even 1 in 3, women might die in childbirth or from its complications. The constant risk of death hung over every pregnancy, a shadow darkening even the hope of new life. Each pregnancy was a gamble with her very existence. A woman might endure multiple pregnancies throughout her fertile years, each one a renewed encounter with the specter of death. And even if the mother survived, the struggle continued for the child. Infant and child mortality rates were devastatingly high. Perhaps half of all children born would not live to see their 5th birthday, succumbing to childhood diseases like measles, dysentery, smallpox, or whooping cough, which we now treat with ease. The sheer number of children born to medieval families was often a desperate attempt to ensure that some would survive to adulthood. Imagine the constant heartbreak for medieval mothers, the raw, profound grief of losing child after child, yet finding the immense emotional resilience to continue hoping, to continue conceiving, and to pour all their love and energy into the precious few who survived. They witnessed cycles of life and death in a way we can barely comprehend, holding tiny, lifeless bodies, burying them with their own hands, and then often returning to the field or the hearth, carrying their grief with quiet fortitude. The cycle of life, death, and renewal was intimately and brutally experienced by medieval women in a way that is difficult for us to fathom. Their daily life was a testament to their physical and emotional endurance. Their strength was not just in their ability to perform arduous tasks, but in their capacity to bear immense sorrow and still find the will to live, to love, and to nurture. Unfair scales, vulnerability, and legal subordination. Beyond the perils of the body, medieval women faced systemic legal and social unfairness. By law and custom, a woman's legal identity was largely subsumed by that of her father or her husband. This concept was known as coverture. A married woman, a femme covert, could not own property independently, make contracts, or represent herself in court without her husband's permission or presence. Her earnings were legally his. Any inheritance she received typically passed into her husband's control. While some customary laws in certain regions might grant a woman limited dower rights, these were far from universal and often challenged, leaving widows vulnerable to poverty and displacement. This legal subordination made women incredibly vulnerable. They had little recourse against domestic abuse, beyond the very limited intervention of the church in extreme cases, which often prioritized marital stability over a woman's safety. A husband had the legal right to chastise his wife, a concept that often extended to physical violence. Her testimony in court might be less valued than a man's, making it difficult for her to seek justice for wrongs committed against her. Perhaps most terrifyingly, accusations, especially of the chilling charge of witchcraft, were disproportionately leveled against women, often older, widowed, or independent women who deviated from social norms. With no understanding of mental illness or scientific cause for misfortune, a strange illness, a failed harvest, or even a quarrel could be blamed on a woman's perceived magical influence. The resulting trials were anything but fair, relying on superstition, coerced confessions through torture, and proofs, like the infamous trial by ordeal. Imagine the chilling fear of a woman living under such a constant shadow, knowing that any misfortune in her community could turn accusing eyes her way, with virtually no legal protection or means to defend herself. The power imbalance was stark, and the consequences of being accused were often fatal. Economic precarity, life without a man, while marriage was often a form of economic survival, being an unmarried woman, or, even more precarious, a widow presented immense economic challenges. An unmarried woman might find refuge in a convent, where she could pursue intellectual and spiritual life, or serve as a domestic servant, but her independence was severely limited. Her opportunities to earn a living wage were few, and she would likely remain dependent on her family or employer. A widow, while regaining some legal independence, often faced immense pressure to remarry to secure a male protector and manager for her children and any property. If she had no children or property, or if her dowry was small, she might fall into destitution, forced to rely on charity from the church or her community, or become an itinerant beggar. Life as an impoverished widow was one of constant struggle for survival. While some women in towns, particularly within guilds, might run businesses, these opportunities were far less prevalent than for men, and often confined to specific trades or only available if they inherited a business from a deceased husband. These business women were exceptions, not the rule, and even they operated within a patriarchal framework that limited their growth and influence. Imagine the immense struggle for a woman to provide for herself and her children in a world where her economic opportunities were so tightly circumscribed, where every day was a battle for sustenance without a man's protection or labor. The threat of poverty was a constant companion for many medieval women, particularly those who found themselves outside the protective confines of marriage. Societal gaze, the look-down mentality. Beyond legal and economic structures, a pervasive societal and religious narrative often looked down upon women, shaping perceptions and limiting their roles. While the Virgin Mary was revered as the ideal of purity and motherhood, a powerful counter-narrative, influenced by interpretations of Eve's temptation in the Garden of Eden, painted women as inherently weaker, more susceptible to sin, and intellectually inferior. This dualistic view, the exalted Virgin versus the fallen Eve, placed an immense, often impossible burden on real women. They were expected to embody purity and piety, yet were simultaneously viewed with suspicion as potential temptresses. Religious texts and sermons often emphasized female humility, obedience, and silence. Women were frequently admonished to be meek, modest, and to keep silent in public assemblies. This contributed to a culture where a woman's voice was less valued in public discourse, where her intellectual pursuits were often discouraged, and where her primary virtue was seen as modesty and submissiveness. Influential male scholars and clerics openly debated whether women even possessed souls fully equal to men's, or were merely instruments of temptation. This was not a fringe idea, but a topic of serious theological discussion. This pervasive cultural devaluation meant that women often found their dignity and worth only within their tightly knit family units or the private sphere of domestic life, rather than in broader society. Their contributions, though vital, were often unseen, unacknowledged, or dismissed as mere women's work. It took immense personal fortitude for a woman to maintain her self-worth in a world that constantly sought to diminish her. Quiet strength and enduring spirit. Despite these profound challenges, medieval women were far from passive victims. They were incredibly resilient, resourceful, and powerful within their own spheres. They were the backbone of the household, managing complex domestic economies that involved everything from food preservation and textile production to budgeting and animal husbandry. They were essential laborers in the fields, working alongside men during harvest and planting seasons. They ran successful, if limited, businesses in towns, proving their entrepreneurial spirit and capability. They were the primary caregivers and educators of children, passing down not just skills, but also values, faith, and the accumulated wisdom of generations. In convents, they found intellectual and spiritual autonomy, often denied to women in the secular world, becoming scholars, artists, scribes, and powerful administrators, preserving knowledge and creating beautiful illuminated manuscripts. They formed strong female networks in their communities, relying on each other for support, advice, and assistance in times of need, during childbirth, illness, or times of mourning. This female solidarity was a vital source of strength and comfort. Their strength was often quiet, found in endurance, ingenuity, and a deep, unwavering faith. They found ways to exert influence, to protect their families, and to shape their communities, even without formal power. Their lives were a testament to their physical and emotional fortitude, their capacity for love, and their fierce determination to survive and thrive against overwhelming odds. They were the unsung heroes of daily life, the silent architects of family and community stability. The story of women in the Middle Ages is one of immense unfairness, constant vulnerability, and pervasive societal devaluation. Yet it is also a testament to the indomitable human spirit, finding ways to endure, to create, to love, and to nurture life, often against truly terrifying odds. Their lives remind us of how far society has progressed, and the silent struggles that paved the way for the freedoms we sometimes take for granted. It is a story that demands our recognition and our respect. So as you drift off to sleep, perhaps you can hear the soft lullaby sung by a medieval mother, the rhythmic thud of a loom, or the whisper of a woman's quiet prayer for safety. Imagine a world where every woman's life was a testament to courage, resilience, and the enduring spark of humanity, shining brightly even in the deepest shadows. Good night.